Welcome to Sweet Dreams Storytelling, where we unwind, relax, and drift into dreamland. I'm your host, Mike, and I'm so glad you're joining me tonight. Let's get cozy and settle in. Story for this evening is our adaptation of a beautiful novel, Aladdin and the Magic Lamp. Chapter 1, The Street Boy. The sun rose lazily over the city of Agrabah, casting golden light over sandstone buildings and dusty alleyways. Narrow streets came to life, with the shouts of merchants, the clatter of hooves, and the scent of fresh bread mingling with the smoke of morning fires. It was the kind of city that never truly slept, not because of its wealth, but because of its restlessness. For every coin clinking in a silk purse, a dozen hands reached to snatch it. And in the middle of it all, dodging between carts and weaving through crowds like a desert fox, ran a boy named Aladdin. He was perhaps 15 or 16. No one, not even his mother, knew exactly. His clothes were little more than patched scraps, his feet bare and dust-covered, but his eyes, sharp, brown, and full of cunning, missed nothing. He had the look of someone always on the edge of discovery or disaster, a half-grin constantly tugging at his lips, as though every moment in his life was either a joke or a challenge. "Come on, Aladdin," a voice shouted behind him. A boy slightly younger, Nassim, wiry and fast, struggled to keep up as they darted through the bazaar. In Aladdin's hand was a bruised pomegranate, stolen in the blur of a passing crowd. He tossed it to Nassim, without breaking stride. "Breakfast," Aladdin said with a wink. "Fit for royalty, if royalty didn't sit mine bruises." They ducked into a broken archway, once part of a nobleman's mansion, now long crumbled and forgotten. It was one of Aladdin's favorite hiding spots, shaded, quiet, and with a view of the city's heart. From here he could see everything: the gold-topped spires of the Sultan's palace, the smoky lines of the poorer quarters, the twisting web of rooftops he often danced across. They devoured the fruit in silence, savoring even the sour parts. Hunger made everything taste sweeter. "Think the princess is as hungry as we are?" Nassim asked, licking juice from his fingers. Aladdin snorted. "The princess probably eats dates wrapped in silk and drinks water so clear you can see your soul in it. If she even knows what a stomach growl sounds like, I still eat my own sandal. You don't dare have sandals." "Exactly." Aladdin laughed, but something in his gaze lingered on the distant palace. He had never seen the princess, only heard of her. Badr-ul-Badur, daughter of the Sultan, kept hidden from common eyes. Rumors said she was as fierce as she was beautiful, raised among scholars and warriors. He liked to imagine she longed to escape those marble walls and walk among ordinary people. Maybe she'd meet someone clever, daring, someone like him. He shook the thought away. Dreams like that were dangerous. His life was not made for marble or silk. His life was cracked walls and stolen meals, days spent dodging guards and nights spent beneath stars. He lived with his mother in a crumbling apartment at the edge of the city, where shutters hung like broken wings and the wind whistled through the cracks. She worked as a seamstress, stitching garments for merchants too cheap to pay fair coin. She loved her son fiercely, but worried more each day. Aladdin returned home just before noon. The room smelled of incense and thread. His mother sat by the window, mending a torn robe with delicate fingers that moved like a dancer's. "You've been out again," she said without looking. "I brought you a fig," he said, placing a bruised one on the table. "Best I could find." She looked at it, then she looked at him, tired eyes softening. "Sit, eat." They shared it in silence. He knew she hated when he stole, but she never said the words aloud anymore. Not since his father died and work grew scarce. The streets had raised Aladdin as much as she had. Later, as the sun dipped to low, Aladdin wandered out again, climbing rooftops and balancing along edges like a bird with invisible wings. He watched the city below, the rich and poor, the merchants and beggars, the children chasing dreams through alleyways. He wasn't bitter, not really, but he knew the rules of the world. People like him didn't get stories told about them. Unless they did something worth remembering. That night, lying on a thin mat, staring at a ceiling filled with cracks like constellations, Aladdin whispered to the darkness, "Their stead's got to be more than this." And far beyond the city walls, in the deep silence of the desert, something ancient stirred, a whisper of sand, a flicker of magic long buried waiting to be found. Chapter 2. A Mysterious Stranger. The following morning broke with the clamor of merchants setting up their stalls. their voices rising like birdsong in the tight corridors of Agrabah's marketplace. Aladdin awoke to the familiar sound of goats arguing beneath his window and the scratch of his mother's needle threading through fabric. Another day, another hustle. He was halfway through trading a polished pebble, which he claimed was a rare desert gem, to a gullible boy in the square when he felt a hand clamp down on his shoulder. "Aladdin?" a voice asked. Aladdin twisted away instinctively, ready to bolt, but stopped. The man who stood before him wasn't a guard. He was tall, draped in fine black robes that shimmered slightly even in shadow. His beard was trimmed with precision, and his eyes were strange. Not cruel, but cold, like wells that ran too deep to see the bottom. "I am sorry, sir," Aladdin said, flashing his most innocent grin. "You must have me confused with someone richer." The man gave a small smile, polite, almost indulgent. "No mistake, you look just like your father." The grin faltered. "My father?" The stranger nodded solemnly. "Omar, wasn't Sitit. Strong man, clever, too clever for his own good. We were brothers, long separated. I've searched for you and your mother ever since I heard of his passing." Aladdin stared at him. No one ever spoke of his father. He had died when Aladdin was very small, a tanner by trade, as far as his mother told it, a kind man, though the city had not been kind to him. "You set sure my uncle." "Yes. My name is Hassan," the man said, bowing slightly, "and I have traveled far to find you." There was something off about him, something smooth and practiced, like a merchant too good at spinning stories. But curiosity tugged harder than caution. "Come," the man said. "Let me see your mother. She still remember me." They walked back to Aladdin's home in silence, the stranger's robes sweeping dust in soft patterns behind him. When they arrived, his mother squinted at the man with clear suspicion. "I don't remember you," she said, arms crossed. "Ah," he said gently. "I was the younger brother, sent east to study the healing arts. I left before Omar met you." Her frown didn't ease, but she said nothing more. The man Hassan produced a small purse of silver and offered it to her. "For you both," he said, "a token of family. I sips done well in foreign lands. Sips time I shared some fortune." She refused at first, but hunger and weariness eventually softened her protests, and she accepted. That night, as the oil lamp burned low, Aladdin sat by the doorway watching the stranger speak in hushed tones with his mother. The man asked many questions, about Aladdin, about their struggles, about the city. Too many, Aladdin thought. Later, Hassan pulled him aside. "You are a clever boy," he said, "wasted here in these alleys. What if I told you there was a way to change your fate?" Aladdin folded his arms. "I've heard that before, usually from liars and snake oil sellers." "I don't offer words," Hassan replied. "I offer something real, something ancient. There is a place outside the city, a hidden place, where your fortune awaits. If you help me, I will share it." Aladdin raised an eyebrow. "Why me?" Hassan hesitated, just a beat too long. Then, because the path was meant for blood, the blood of your father sits line, only you can pass. I need your help, Aladdin. Aladdin looked at him closely. The man didn't flinch, and something, fate or foolishness, stirred in the boy's chest. He thought of cracked ceilings and bruised fruit, of his mother's bent shoulders, of the way people looked past him, as if he were nothing. Maybe this was the more he'd whispered to the stars. "All right," he said. "When do we leave?" Hassan smiled. This time, it didn't reach his eyes. "Tomorrow," he said, "at dawn." That night, Aladdin didn't sleep. He watched the stars through a hole in the roof and wondered whether he'd just agreed to something that would change his life or end it. In the dark, the city breathed around him, unaware that a forgotten boy had just taken his first step into legend. Chapter 3: The Hidden Cave. Dawn broke cold and quiet. The stars had only just vanished when Aladdin crept out of his home, careful not to wake his mother. She stirred in her sleep, murmuring his name once, but did not rise. He hesitated for a moment, watching her curled form beneath the patched blanket. Then he stepped into the street, and the city swallowed him whole. Hassan was waiting by the city gate, dressed not in his flowing black robes, but in a simpler traveler's cloak. 2 camels waited, snorting softly in the early chill. "You came," Hassan said. "I said I would." Aladdin replied, climbing onto the smaller camel. "Where are we going?" "To the edge of the world," the man said cryptically, and with a quiet click of his tongue, they rode out into the desert. The journey into silence. The sun rose higher, and the city shrank behind them, replaced by endless dunes that rolled like waves of gold. The silence of the desert was absolute, a haunting hush, broken only by the crunch of hooves and the occasional gust of wind. Aladdin had never been so far from the noise of the city. At first he found it peaceful, then unsettling. "How much farther?" he asked. "Not far," Hassan said. "You sit, see." Hours passed. The sun grew harsh. Hassan offered no food, no conversation, only vague comments about ancient secrets and forgotten magic. Aladdin began to regret agreeing to the journey, but pride kept him from turning back. Finally, just as the heat became unbearable, they stopped near a cluster of jagged black stones that rose out of the sand like broken teeth. Hassan dismounted and approached the stones. He traced his fingers across one of them, whispering in a language Aladdin didn't recognize. The air shifted. Something unseen trembled underfoot. Then, with a groan like the world exhaling, the ground before the stones split open. A circular entrance appeared, stone descending like a spiral staircase into darkness. Aladdin stared. "That sip's not natural. It's such not meant to be," Hassan said. His eyes gleamed. "This is the entrance to an ancient chamber, sealed for centuries. Inside lies a treasure beyond imagining." Aladdin glanced at him. "And you need me to go in?" "You must not touch anything," Hassan said quickly. "There are traps, but you are young, nimble, and more importantly, you bear the blood of Omar. Only your line can open the inner chamber." Aladdin swallowed hard. "What do I have to bring back?" Hassanik's voice dropped low. "There is an old brass lamp. It will be resting on a pedestal in the final room. Nothing else matters. Bring me the lamp, and riches beyond belief will be yours." Aladdin stepped toward the entrance. A cold draft brushed against him, as if the cave were breathing. He turned back one last time. "What if something goes wrong?" Hassan's eyes did not blink. "It one set, if you follow my instructions." The boy hesitated, then descended into the deep. The air inside was cooler, but thick and damp. The spiral staircase led to a corridor lit by strange blue crystals that pulsed faintly with light. Ancient carvings covered the walls, beasts with too many eyes, stars twisted into impossible shapes. Aladdin had no idea what they meant, but something about them made his skin crawl. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber. Gold, jewels, mountains of treasure. The floor glittered beneath his feet, coins and diamonds crunching like sand. Statues of solid jade loomed in silence. Racks of weapons shimmered with strange enchantments. Aladdin stared, stunned. He took a cautious step forward. "Don't touch anything," he muttered to himself. "Just the lamp." He crossed the chamber, eyes darting to every corner. In the very back, raised on a stone pedestal carved like a blooming lotus, sat a small, unremarkable object, a dull brass lamp. It looked old, worn smooth by time. Not magical, not even valuable. "This," he whispered. He picked it up. The moment his fingers closed around it, the air shifted again, sharper this time. Something in the walls moved. A distant grinding sound echoed behind him. He turned and froze. The entrance was closing. "Hey!" he shouted, running toward the doorway. He reached the steps just as the stone above began to grind downward. At the top, Hassan stood peering in. "Throw me the lamp," he cried. "Quickly!" Aladdin stopped. His instincts screamed. "Let me out first." "No, the lamp." Aladdin narrowed his eyes. "You said I could have riches. After the lamp. No deal." For the first time, Hassan's calm expression cracked. "Foolish boy," he snarled. His hand flashed and fire burst from his palm, striking the rock. The entrance collapsed with a thunderous crash, sealing Aladdin in darkness, dust and silence. Aladdin fell to his knees, coughing. He was trapped, alone. He stared at the lamp in his hand, heart pounding, rage, fear, and regret churned inside him. Then, without thinking, he rubbed the lamp, trying to clear the soot, and the world exploded with light. The first spark, a roar, a wind, a burst of violet flame. A figure rose from the lamp, immense, translucent and crowned with golden horns. "But a cho disturbs my slumber," boomed a voice that shook the stones. Aladdin fell back, shielding his eyes. The figure loomed, not human, not beast, but something ancient and powerful. He opened his mouth to scream, but managed only a whisper. "What are you?" The figure bent low, eyes glowing like twin suns. "I am the genie of the lamp," it said, "and you are my master." Chapter 4: Betrayal and the Lamp. Aladdin could hardly breathe. The genie hovered above him, impossibly tall and wreathed in smoky blue fire. His eyes were molten gold, his skin an ever-shifting shade of storm cloud and ash. He wore ancient jewelry, thick cuffs at his wrists, and a pendant that hummed with energy. The cave, so vast and cold only moments ago, now pulsed with heat and humming magic. "I said," the genie rumbled again, "who disturbs my slumber?" Aladdin pushed himself backward until his back hit a pile of treasure. His voice trembled. My name is Aladdin. I didn't mean to disturb anything. I was trapped here, and I rubbed the lamp too." The genie's eyes narrowed. For a moment, all was silence. Then the great being blinked once, and his expression changed, from wrath to curiosity. "Aladdin," he repeated, "you are not the sorcerer." "No," Aladdin said, still shaking. "That man, he lied to me. He brought me here to get the lamp, and left me behind." The genie Sep's mouth curled into a smirk, ancient and dangerous. "Yes, that sounds like him. Treacherous creatures. These would-be masters of magic. But you hold the lamp now. You have summoned me." "What does that mean?" Aladdin asked. "It means," the genie said, lowering himself to the ground with a thunderous impact, "I am bound to you. 3 wishes, anything your heart desires. Command, and it shall be done." Aladdin sensed breath, caught in his throat. "Anything?" he asked, eyes wide. "Food, jewels, freedom." "Yes," said the genie, "but choose wisely, for power comes with consequence, and desire is a hungry thing." Aladdin looked around the collapsing cave. Treasure glittered in all directions, but none of it mattered if he couldn't escape. He rose to his feet slowly, lamp clutched in his hand. "I want to get out of here," he said. "Back to the surface, back to the city." The genie nodded. "Your first wish is granted." He snapped his fingers. The escape. The cave cracked with sound. Wind roared in a spiral of smoke and magic. Aladdin felt himself lifted off the ground, weightless, as though flung through a tunnel of stars and stone. He landed hard in sand, coughing. The sky above him was painted with late afternoon gold. Birds circled overhead. The desert stretched out, hot and quiet. The black rocks that had marked the entrance were gone, buried or sealed beneath the earth once more. He was free. Aladdin stared at the lamp in his hand, dusted with sand but still warm. He thought of the sorcerer, Hassan, and his lies. Rage flared in his chest, sharp and hot. "I'm gonna find him," Aladdin muttered. "One day, I still make him pay. But not now." Now he needed to return home, to his mother, to the city, to everything that still made him human. He turned to the genie. "What should I call you?" The great being looked at him with something between amusement and pride. "I have had many names, in tongues long dead, in stories buried in sand, but you may call me Rukmar." "Rukmar," Aladdin repeated. "Are you evil?" The genie chuckled, a deep, echoing sound. "I am not good. I am not evil. I am power. What you do with me will decide what the world calls me." That night, under the starlit sky, Aladdin trudged back toward Agrabah, exhausted, barefoot, and changed. The lamp was heavy in his pocket, heavier still in its meaning. Behind him, the desert swallowed the cave once more, its secrets buried, for now. Ahead of him, the city of dreams waited. But Aladdin no longer walked as a boy scraping by in alleyways. He walked as the master of a genie, and the world had just begun to shift beneath his feet. Chapter 5: The First Wish. By the time Aladdin reached the city gates, the stars had faded, and the first threads of dawn unraveled across the sky. The desert had drained him, sand in his throat, aching legs, sleep-deprived eyes, but none of it mattered. Clutched tightly in his calloused hand was the thing that had changed everything. The lamp. A man had betrayed him. A genie had saved him. And now, Aladdin was no longer just a street boy. He was something else. The return. He slipped through the still sleeping city, moving like a shadow through side streets and familiar shortcuts. Even the beggars were silent, curled up beneath tattered blankets or archways. The smells of early bread and coal fire rose in the air, warm and comforting after the emptiness of the desert. When he reached his building, he paused outside the cracked wooden door of the apartment. Something held him back, not fear, but a strange hesitation. He could already imagine the look on his mother's face, relief, followed by worry, then a scolding sharp enough to cut stone. He pushed the door open. She was sitting at the table, sewing in the dim morning light. The needle froze mid-air the moment she saw him. "Aladdin," her voice broke. "By the stars, where have you been?" She rushed to him, cupping his face, checking his hands, as though to make sure he was real. I thought, she whispered. "He isn't sorry," he said quietly. "There was a man, said he was Father Sip's brother, took me to the desert, lied to me, left me to die." Her hands dropped. "What? Who?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled the lamp from his satchel and placed it gently on the table. "What is that?" "Magic," he said. She stared at it like it might bite her. "Aladdin, I shall prove it." He turned toward the open center of the room, heart thudding. He gripped the lamp. It was warm now, as though it remembered being alive. With a deep breath, he rubbed it. Rukmar appears. Smoke burst from the lamp in a swirl of brilliant color, blue, purple, gold, until the genie emerged once more, coalescing into shape like a storm given form. Rukmar stood tall, arms crossed, his head brushing the low ceiling. The room filled with the scent of spice and old flame. Aladdin Sip's mother screamed and dropped the needle. Rukmar gave a low bow. "You called, master." Aladdin could feel his mother trembling beside him. "Do ne Sep be afraid," he whispered. "He Sep's bound to me. He Sep's not here to hurt us." The genie glanced at her, "Unless commanded to." "Don Set," Aladdin said sharply. Rukmar raised an eyebrow. "I obey." The room was quiet again, save for the sound of a heart pounding. The first true wish. Aladdin looked at the genie, then at the meager room they lived in, peeling walls, a warped table, cupboards that groaned when opened. His mother's fingers were worn thin from years of mending. He thought of the riches in the cave, the silence of his father's name, the feeling of being invisible to the world. "I want food," he said. "A feast, enough to feed us for days." The genie nodded once. "As you wish." He snapped his fingers. Suddenly, the table groaned beneath the weight of platters, silver bowls filled with spiced lamb, honeyed dates, rice with saffron and almonds, roasted figs, steaming bread, pomegranates and golden cups of water that glowed faintly with freshness. The scent washed over them like a wave. His mother sank into a chair. "By the heavens." "Eat," Aladdin said. "It sits all real." She touched a fig, half expecting it to vanish. When it didn't, she bit into it and closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "We Zep never had food like this." Aladdin sat with her, slowly eating. Each bite was warmth, safety, something deep and ancient in his bones that whispered, "You are no longer powerless." Rukmar remained silent, watching them with inscrutable eyes. Afterward, when the dishes cleared themselves and the genie faded into smoke once more, Aladdin sat alone on the rooftop, the lamp in his lap. The stars shimmered above, but they no longer seemed so far away. He had used only one wish, and already the world had begun to tilt. Closing reflection, he whispered to the wind, "I once don't waste this." But somewhere deep in the night, in the same silence that had once hidden a cave, something darker stirred, the echo of a sorcerer's fury, a name spoken in fire. Hassan had lost the lamp, but he had not forgotten. Chapter 6. Rise from the Ashes. A week passed. A week since magic had entered Aladdin's life like a lightning strike, sudden, terrifying, and impossible to ignore. The feast had been only the beginning. He made no wild wishes, no castles, no armies, not yet. Aladdin was clever enough to understand that power, once shown too loudly, draws attention. Attention breeds danger. So he worked quietly. Every night, when the city fell into sleep and only jackals roamed the alleys, Aladdin would sit alone with the lamp. Rukmar would rise from smoke and shadow, and Aladdin would ask questions about the world, about the rules of magic, about what was possible and what was not. The genie answered each question with patience, though his golden eyes often gleamed with amusement. "You do not hunger for jewels," Rukmar once said, "strange for a boy of your past." "I want more than gold," Aladdin replied. "I want to be someone. A new home." Their tiny apartment was the first to change. One wish, spoken with care, transformed it. The cracked walls smoothed, the floor warmed with polished tile. A kitchen was stocked with spices, oil, dried fruits, and clean water. Rugs appeared from distant lands, embroidered with threads finer than silk. His mother nearly fainted when she woke up. "I told you," Aladdin said with a grin. "Things are changing." But she didn't smile. She stared at him for a long time, her expression unreadable. "Aladdin, where does this come from?" "From a gift," he said. "From luck, from something father must sit left behind." She didn't press, not yet, but worry lingered behind her eyes like a shadow. The merchant sits boy. Aladdin knew he couldn't stay hidden forever. With one of his remaining wishes, he asked Rukmar to create for him the garments of a merchant's son, fine, but not ostentatious. Silk dyed deep blue, a vest of silver thread, and soft leather boots. His hair was trimmed neatly, his skin no longer smeared with dust. He walked through the bazaar like a ghost reborn. Vendors who once ignored him now greeted him. Guards stepped aside. The cruel baker who once chased him for stealing a loaf offered him a free one, mistaking him for the son of some caravan lord. Aladdin thanked him with a smile and gave the bread to a starving child nearby. "You stir different," said Nasim when they met by chance. "What happened to you?" "Just got lucky," Aladdin said. But luck was never this deliberate. He wasn't content to just appear rich. He started asking questions in the marketplace about trade routes, merchant families, royal decrees. He learned quickly, as if knowledge clung to him now. He paid scribes to teach him proper reading and speech. He wanted to earn his new face, even if it had come by magic. He felt powerful, not because he had the lamp, but because for the first time he had options. Dreams of the palace. One evening, as he watched the city from the rooftop, his eyes wandered once more to the palace, tall, domed, and bathed in torchlight like a mountain of flame. Badrul Badr. The name had echoed in his mind ever since he'd returned from the cave. The princess, the mystery, the dream. What would it take to reach her? Not just riches, not just magic, something more. He turned to Rukmar, who lounged nearby in a haze of smoke, idly forming birds from flame. "Do you know her?" "The princess," the genie replied, not looking up. "Of course, every tongue in the palace speaks her name. What's she like?" "She's smarter than most of the men who try to marry her, and more dangerous than they know." Aladdin smiled. "I want to meet her." Rukmar raised a brow. "You set a long way from street dust to wedding halls." "Not as far as I used to be." The genie gave a low laugh, deep and smoky. "I see," he said. "Ambition has taken root." "Not ambition," Aladdin said. "Purpose." And for the first time, he meant it. Closing reflection. That night, Aladdin stood at his window, lamp in hand. He had not yet used his second wish. Not truly, not for anything grand. But he knew what he wanted now. He wanted to rise not just from poverty, but from obscurity, to become more than a survivor, more than a boy lost in alleys and silence. He wanted to become a name. And the lamp, still warm in his palm, pulsed softly, as if it understood. Far off in the desert, the wind stirred, and in its sigh, a name echoed in burning sand. Hassan. The sorcerer had not forgotten, and he was coming. Chapter 7. The Princess of the Kingdom. The palace rose above the city like a dream carved from gold and sunlight, an impossible shape against the blue desert sky. Its towers gleamed, domes arched like the heavens themselves, and the outer walls shimmered with tile mosaics that changed color with the angle of the sun. To the poor, it was a distant legend. To the rich, a symbol of order. To Aladdin, it was a challenge. He had watched it for years. He'd climbed onto rooftops to glimpse its silhouette. He'd asked merchants for rumors about the royal court, but he had never seen the princess. No one had. She was hidden, protected, spoken of only in hushed awe. Until now, a glimpse of the unreachable. It happened on the first day of the Festival of Winds, a celebration when lanterns floated through the air and colored silks were stretched between alleyways like sails. The city pulsed with sound and life. Drummers played in the streets, and children ran with painted kites shaped like phoenixes and dragons. Aladdin moved through the crowds dressed in his fine garments, still modest, but now clearly of status. He didn't steal anymore. He bought things, small things, a ring here, a flower there. He gave more than he kept. He was starting to feel real in this new skin. Then the crowd shifted, parted, and went quiet. A procession moved down the wide thoroughfare. Golden banners, black stallioned guards, women in veils carrying perfumed jars, and finally, a chariot drawn by ivory white horses. In the chariot stood a young woman. Her veil was sheer enough to glimpse the shape of her face, strong jaw, wide dark eyes that didn't look down, but through the people around her. She didn't wave, she didn't smile. She looked like someone accustomed to being watched, but rarely seen. Aladdin Sep's breath caught. Princess Badroulbadour. It had to be her. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was untouchable, not out of pride, but power, like a mountain or the sea. He stepped forward instinctively, just enough to make eye contact. For a second, perhaps only that, her gaze met his. It was not curiosity, it was recognition. And then she was gone, her chariot vanishing through the gates that sealed behind her like closing pages of a storybook. Aladdin stood frozen in the crowd, his heart pounding, his world tilting. Questions in the dark. That night, he summoned Rukma on the rooftop under the stars. "I saw her," Aladdin said. "I know," the genie replied, lounging mid-air in a coiled spiral of smoke and light, "and she saw you." "Who is she really?" "Badroulbadour, only daughter of Sultan Rahman, educated by the royal philosophers, trained by warriors, betrothed a dozen times, rejected them all. Why? Because none of them were her choice." Aladdin Sep's fists clenched at his sides. "I want to meet her, not from behind a curtain, not at a distance, for real." "Dangerous wish," Rukma said. "The Sultan has spies in every corner. Suitors are judged like horses. One misstep, and you still be banished or worse." "I'm not afraid," Aladdin said. "No," the genie murmured. "You set not." He looked at Aladdin with something new in his voice, not just amusement but warning. "Love," he said softly, "is the most unpredictable magic of all. It burns brighter than gold, and it destroys quicker than fire." The garden beyond the wall. In the days that followed, Aladdin asked discreet questions. He learned the princess walked the palace gardens every third evening, under guard but not watched closely. He studied the outer walls, the guards' patterns, the blind corners where magic might slip through unnoticed. He began to form a plan. Not to take, not to steal, but to meet her, not as a street boy, not as a prince, just as himself. And still, deep down, the fear gnawed at him. What if she knew the truth? What if she saw who really was, and turned away? The lamp burned warm beneath his vest. He had 2 wishes left, and one growing dream that no magic could guarantee. Closing reflection. Far behind palace walls, in her private chamber of rosewood and ivory, Princess Badroulbadour stood at her window. She touched her fingers to the veil she had worn that day, remembering the eyes she'd met in the crowd. Not pleading eyes, not hungry ones, not ones filled with ambition or greed, but something else. Challenge, recognition, reflection. She didn't know his name, not yet. But in her chest, something stirred, something fierce and forgotten. And somewhere far below the stars, destiny smiled. Chapter 8. The Sultan Sep's Challenge. 2 days passed. 2 days since Aladdin had seen her, Princess Badroulbadour, standing above the city like a figure carved from prophecy. Her image had not left him. Not in dreams, not in waking. It had taken root, blooming like something fated and fierce in his chest. But staring wasn't enough. He had made his choice. It was time to act. The plan. Aladdin stood once more on the rooftop, the lamp in his hands, the early morning wind stirring the loose folds of his new robe, darker, finer than any he had worn before. He had used no wishes for wealth or weapons. He'd saved them. But today would change everything. He summoned Rukma. The genie appeared in a slow coil of smoke and fire, arms folded, as always, with that expression of ancient curiosity. "So," Rukma said, "today is the day." Aladdin nodded. "I want to marry her." "Many men do, but none of them are me." The genie tilted his head. "What is your plan?" Aladdin took a breath. "We sit going to the palace. I sit me going to speak to the Sultan as a noble suitor." "And what, pray, will you offer the Sultan in exchange for his only daughter?" Aladdin's silence stretched. He had thought about this. "He wants a strong alliance, wealth, power, security. Then give him something no prince ever could." Aladdin looked at the lamp. "Use my second wish." Rukma straightened, the air shimmering faintly around him. "Are you certain?" "Yes, I wish for a gift, not just gold or gems, something impossible, something that will prove I am not merely rich, but chosen." The genie grinned slowly. "Ah, now you are learning." He snapped his fingers. "A gift worth a kingdom." An hour later, Aladdin stood at the gates of the palace in a procession that had not existed moments before. 12 great horses, with black manes and sapphire-studded saddles, each led by a servant in robes of emerald and white. Behind them came camels, their packs filled with gold coins and bolts of silk from lands even the Sultan had never heard of, rare spices, jewels shaped like flowers, a chest filled with uncut diamonds the size of walnuts. And at the center, Aladdin, seated on a white stallion, calm and silent as the city whispered around him. He didn't speak until the gates opened. Before the Sultan, the throne room of the palace was carved of marble and glass, its walls embedded with verses of ancient poetry written in gold script. At its end sat Sultan Rahman, a man in his twilight years but still sharp-eyed, his beard snowy, his fingers heavy with rings. He regarded Aladdin with polite amusement. "You are not from the courts," he said. "I am not," Aladdin replied, bowing low, "but I come with intention and honor." "And quite the spectacle," the Sultan said, gesturing to the display of wealth. "Why have you come, young man of mystery?" Aladdin raised his eyes, steady and respectful. "I have come to request the hand of your daughter, Princess Badroulbadour." The court murmured, a few nobles laughed. One man choked on a date. But the Sultan did not laugh. "You ask boldly." "I love boldly." The Sultan studied him. "You are clever, well-dressed, and your gift, extravagant. But any man with coin can buy jewels. A husband must offer more." Aladdin said nothing. So the Sultan stood and raised his hand. "Then here is my challenge," he said, his voice echoing. "Build her a palace, one worthy of her name. It must be taller than mine, more beautiful than anything in Agrabah, with towers that catch the stars and gardens that never wither. Do this, and you may see her." Gasps rippled through the court. A prince from the east scoffed. Another shook his head. But Aladdin bowed deeply. "I accept." The Sultan's set's brow lifted. "You do not flinch at the impossible." "No, your majesty, I do not." The Sultan nodded once. "You have 1 week." The third wish. That night, back in the quiet of his rooftop home, Aladdin held the lamp in his hands. It was warm again, as though it had been waiting for this moment. He summoned Rukma. "A palace," Aladdin said. "Not just large, not just rich. A palace that no one can ignore." The genie nodded. "Is this your third and final wish?" Aladdin hesitated, then said, "Yes." Rukma Sip's eyes flared with flame. "Then let it be done." He snapped his fingers. The ground rumbled. Light burst from the horizon. Towers rose like spears from the earth. Walls of polished quartz and flowing water. Spires lined with opal and crystal. A garden bloomed in the air itself, its vines suspended as if caught in wind. Balconies opened to the sky. Domes shimmered like silver moons. And in the center, a throne of light. Aladdin stepped inside his new home. The city awoke the next day to find it standing there, overnight, as though the gods themselves had planted it. A palace not born of men, but of magic. Closing reflection. In the royal chamber, Princess Badroulbadour stood at her window, watching the impossible palace glitter in the morning sun. A gift, a challenge answered. She pressed her fingers to the glass. "So," she whispered, "you are real after all." And deep beneath the earth, in caverns no man dared enter, a shadow stirred. The lamp had been used. and the sorcerer knew. Chapter 9. A Royal Wedding. The people of Agrabah had never seen such a palace. They came in waves to marvel at it, staring up at its sky-brushing towers and crystal fountains that poured water scented with roses. Children swore they saw stars caught in its spires even at midday. Musicians gathered near its marble gates just to play in the echo of its perfect acoustics. Some claimed it had not been built, but summoned by the heavens themselves. And perhaps in a way, they were right. But the greater wonder still awaited. A royal wedding had been announced. The Sultan himself declared it with a voice of thunder and joy, standing upon his great balcony before a sea of his subjects. In 1 week's time, he proclaimed, "My daughter Princess Badroulbadour shall be wed, not to a prince of blood, but to a man of destiny." And the city erupted in cheers. The bride set's decision. Badroulbadour sat in silence as her attendants braided silver thread into her dark hair. She had not objected to the announcement. She had not smiled either. She had asked only one thing of her father: to meet the man. Not through rumors, not through gifts, face to face. So on the eve of the 7th day, Aladdin was brought to the royal gardens. He waited beneath an ancient fig tree that had stood longer than the city itself. He wore no jewels, no crown, just a robe of deep blue like twilight, and a ring of white gold shaped like a serpent eating its tail. A gift from Rukma, though Aladdin never asked what it meant. When she arrived, she did not bow. Neither did he. Their eyes met like two flints striking. "You're not what I expected," she said. "Neither are you," he replied. There was a long silence. "I've been proposed to by 100 men," she said, arms crossed. "Warriors, princes, poets. You are the first who didn't send a statue of himself before speaking a word." Aladdin smiled. Would it have helped? Not even slightly. She studied him, not just his face, but the truth beneath it. She was trained to read men, and he was hard to read. "You built a palace in a night." He nodded. "You summoned wealth no kingdom could rival." Another nod. "And yet you look at me as though you stir afraid I might walk away." Aladdin's voice was quiet. "Because I am." That made her pause. She stepped closer. "Then tell me, who are you really?" He could have lied. Said he was royalty from a hidden land. Said he was touched by fate, chosen by the stars. But something in her gaze demanded truth. "I was a street boy," he said. "Poor, nobody. I stolen bread to live. I slept beneath broken roofs. I was given something powerful, and I used it, but not to rule, only to be seen." Badroulbadour looked at him for a long moment. Then very slowly, she offered her hand. "You are seen now." And for the first time, Aladdin felt real. The wedding of light. The wedding took place at twilight, when the sky turned violet and the stars blinked open like candles on black velvet. The city came alive with music and banners. People danced in the streets. Fires burned in braziers shaped like lotus blossoms. The ceremony was held in the palace gardens, not the Sultan's, but Aladdin's, where the trees whispered with magic and the wind smelled like honey and cedar. The princess wore white and gold, her veil embroidered with tiny sapphires that glittered like a second sky. Aladdin wore a robe of deep crimson and silver thread, his only ornament a pin bearing the crest of his father, a symbol lost to time, now reclaimed. When they stood together beneath the ceremonial arch, hand in hand, even the Sultan wept softly into his beard. Rukma watched from a rooftop, invisible to all but the moon. "You walk a strange path, boy," he murmured. But even he could not help but smile. The night after, later that night, after the last guests had gone, Aladdin and Badroulbadour sat alone on the palace balcony, wrapped in silence and moonlight. "No more wishes," he said. She turned toward him. "None left?" "No," he said. "I used the last one for this." She took his hand. "Then you already proven you no ordinary man." Aladdin leaned back, eyes on the stars. "I just want peace." "You shall have it," she promised. But far below the palace, in a marketplace alley lit by dying lanterns, a figure watched the sky with narrowed eyes. Cloaked in black, face hidden, staff in hand, the sorcerer had returned. And he had seen the lamp in Aladdin's belt during the wedding procession. He smiled beneath his hood. "Peace is for fools," he whispered, "and fools are easy to ruin." Closing reflection. That night, while the city dreamed of love and magic, Aladdin lay beside his bride, unaware that his greatest enemy was already inside the walls. And the lamp, the source of it all, lay quiet in its velvet pouch, waiting to be taken. Chapter 10. The Sorcerer Returns. The palace shimmered with joy in the days that followed the wedding, a kind of stillness, rare and golden, where even the wind seemed to hum in celebration. Aladdin and Badr walked the gardens hand in hand. The people of Agrabah spoke his name with pride, not envy. He had become a legend in his own lifetime. But shadows do not vanish in sunlight. They simply wait. And in the alleys of Agrabah, a stranger had begun to move, a cloaked figure whose voice oiled its way into taverns and merchant halls, slipping past suspicion like a serpent in water. Hassan had returned. The disguise. He wore a different face now, aged skin, a stooped back, cataract-clouded eyes, a hunched old man who introduced himself as Abdul the lamp seller. His voice trembled when he spoke, and his hands shook as he opened a small wooden case filled with worn, dusty lamps. Lamps for coins, he called, shuffling down the merchant square. New lamps for old lamps replaced for free. The people laughed at first. A silly old man, they thought. Some even played along, handing over cracked copper lamps in exchange for cheap replacements. The seller took them with exaggerated reverence, bowing and muttering blessings in a foreign tongue. But no one knew what he was truly seeking. One lamp. The lamp. The one whose absence had ruined his rise to power. The one stolen by a boy he had left for dead. He had watched that boy rise from dirt into royalty. He had watched him build a palace with the power that should have been his. But soon, the lamp would be returned, and the boy would fall. A palace unaware. Inside the palace, Aladdin remained unaware of the danger that slithered at his gates. He had grown comfortable, not lazy, not arrogant, but safe. The lamp was now stored in a velvet pouch in his bedchamber. He had no more wishes, and thus he believed, no more use for it. But Badr noticed something strange. The servants whispered of a man in the marketplace, the strange old beggar who wanted old lamps. She mentioned it idly at dinner. "I saw him from the balcony," she said. "He carries himself oddly, doesn't look anyone in the eye, except the palace." Aladdin waved it off. A trickster. "We had many since the wedding. They think riches mean weakness." But her expression stayed uneasy. Still, something about him felt off. "I send a guard to question him," Aladdin said. "Nothing to worry about." He smiled, but she did not smile back. In her dreams that night, she saw a flickering light swallowed by darkness. The plot unfolds. It happened during an afternoon stroll. Badr, wrapped in silks the color of crushed violets, passed through the lower courtyard on her way to the mosaic pool. Her ladies trailed behind her, a gentle flutter of laughter, small talk, the rustle of fans and scarves. Then she heard it. New lamps for old. She turned, her eyes narrowed. The old man was there, standing beside a palace column, as if he'd been waiting. His back bowed, his face half covered in shadows. "New lamps for old," he croaked again. "A gift for royalty, a fair trade." The ladies giggled. One of them stepped forward, amused. But Badr's voice cut through the air. "Stop." The servant froze. The princess stepped closer, staring at the hunched man. "Who sent you?" He looked up, just for a breath. A glimmer of fire flickered in those clouded eyes, gone in an instant. "No one, Your Highness," he said. "A poor man, a seller of light." She frowned, unsettled. "Leave this place." He bowed. "As you command." But as he turned away, one of her younger attendants, curious and eager to please, called out to him. "I have one," she said brightly, from her chamber. An old brass one, she said, was useless now. Before the princess could speak, the girl ran back to the tower, the exchange. That evening, Badr entered her bedchamber and felt it immediately. A stillness, a wrongness. The air smelled faintly of soot. The pouch that had always lain beneath the pillow, the lamp's resting place, was gone. Her heart stopped. She ran to the windows, looked out. In the distance, beyond the rooftops and domes, a speck of movement vanished into the desert. Gone. She turned slowly, her pulse pounding. "Guards," she screamed. "Seal the gates." But it was too late. Hassan had the lamp, and for the first time since the cave, he rubbed it with both hands, grinning as smoke coiled into the night sky. Closing reflection. Aladdin did not yet know. He lay in the garden, watching fireflies dance through the trees, thinking this peace would last forever. But beneath the stars the balance had shifted, and somewhere beyond the dunes, Rukmar rose into the air with hollow eyes, bound once more not by loyalty, but command. The sorcerer had returned. The genie was no longer Aladdin Seps, and the story was about to fall apart. Chapter 11. The Fake Lamp Seller. The moon hung low over Agrabah, swollen and pale like an eye that had seen too much. Its light bathed the palace in silver, turning its towers into ghostly pillars and its garden paths into rivers of white stone. Inside her chamber, Princess Bedrulbudur paced in silence. The lamp was gone. She had confirmed it herself, checked the velvet pouch under the pillow, the cabinet where it was sometimes kept, even the private vault hidden behind the tapestries. Empty. The air had shifted since its disappearance. Magic once humming softly in the palace walls had gone still. It was like living inside a painting, perfectly preserved and completely lifeless. And she had allowed it. The servant girl who traded it to the old man had no idea what she'd done. She had smiled, proud of her cleverness, saying she'd found a useless old lamp and given it away for a brand new bronze one, shiny and useless. A joke, a harmless trade. Badrulbudur had not laughed. Aladdin still didn't know. Not yet. Cracks in the marble. He found her in the garden the next morning, sitting beneath the hanging vines of a date palm. She didn't look up when he approached. "You set up early," he said gently. She nodded but said nothing. He sat beside her. "You set been quiet lately." She turned slowly, her face unreadable. "Aladdin, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Always. Where is the lamp?" He froze. "It sits in our chamber," he said, "under the cushion." "Why?" Her silence was worse than any scream. He stood quickly. "What Sep's wrong?" She met his eyes. "It sits gone." The words struck him like a thrown blade. "No, that Sip's impossible. I checked. Myself." He didn't wait for more. He ran through corridors, across marble floors into their bedchamber, to open drawers, flung aside pillows, ripped back the tapestry. Gone. He stood in the center of the room, breathless, furious and afraid. "How?" he whispered. Badrulbudur stood in the doorway, her voice soft and cold. There was an old man outside the gates, a lamp seller. He was offering new lamps for old. Aladdin Sek's eyes widened. No. One of the girls, she thought she was being helpful. She brought him the lamp. He sank to his knees. "No, no, no. I told you he felt wrong," she said, voice tight with guilt. "I told you something wasn't set right." Aladdin didn't speak. He couldn't set. The lamp was gone. Rukmar was gone. The palace, their lives, everything, it all hung on the edge of a blade now. And he knew exactly who had the blade. A world torn apart. The next day began like any other, until the sky changed. It started with a sound, a low humming drone that rose slowly until it became a roar. Then came the light, unnatural and sickly green, rippling through the clouds like oil on water. And then the palace shook. Guards screamed. Windows cracked. The walls groaned as if the foundation itself were rebelling. And then, all at once, everything vanished. Aladdin felt his feet fall out from under him. He tumbled forward, landing hard on what felt like stone, but it wasn't their stone. Not marble, not tile. Sand. He gasped and looked around. They were no longer in Agrabah. The garden was gone. The towers, gone. The horizon had changed. The entire palace now sat in the middle of a lifeless desert, surrounded by dunes and black stone. Above them, the sky was red. Beside him, Badrulbudur rose to her feet, wide-eyed. What just happened? Then they heard it. A laugh. It echoed across the wind like thunder wrapped in malice. On a nearby hill stood a man in black, cloaked, hooded, staff in hand. Aladdin knew that laugh. Hassan. The sorcerer raised a hand, and the skies twisted again. Storm clouds bloomed unnaturally. Lightning flickered, but not from nature, from magic. From the lamp. clutched in his free hand. The palace had been taken, the genie had been claimed, and Aladdin had nothing. Closing reflection. That night, the palace stood silent in a foreign land, stranded in exile. In his chamber, Aladdin stared into the distance, rage boiling behind his eyes. He had climbed from dust to glory, and now he'd been cast lower than ever before. But he wasn't finished. Not yet. And in the deep flickering heart of the desert night, something ancient stirred inside him, not magic, but purpose. Chapter 12. The Fall of the Palace. The desert was deathly quiet. The sun beat down upon the sand, bleaching the world in gold and white, but it offered no warmth, only emptiness. Around the stolen palace, now marooned in the wastelands like a dream cast ashore, the silence stretched for miles. No birds, no wind, no sign of life. The palace, once Agrabah's most beautiful wonder, now looked like a mirage in morning, and Aladdin stood at its edge, staring out into nothing. Everything he had built was gone. Everything but her. After the theft, Princess Badroulbadah moved through the silent halls like a ghost. The staff remained, but they were in shock. Some wept quietly, others stared at the strange red sky and cursed the sorcery that had brought them here. Rukumar was gone, that much was clear. The genie's presence, once humming through the walls like invisible flame, had vanished. No magic remained, no warmth, no hope. Aladdin had not slept, had not eaten. He kept pacing the upper balcony, fists clenched, eyes scanning the dunes as if he might see the sorcerer returning to gloat. He finally spoke near sundown. "We were fools," he said bitterly. Badroulbadah joined him, her veil pinned back, her gaze hard. "You were not a fool, you were kind. Kindness is what got the lamp stolen, what got us exiled." She was quiet. Aladdin turned to her, eyes fierce. "I swore I would protect you, that I would build you something greater than a kingdom, and now I can even promise you safety." "You still have me," she said simply. He looked at her. That, more than anything, made him hurt. Because love without power felt like paper in a storm. Hassanet's dominion, far from the stolen palace, in the volcanic canyons that bordered the southern wastes, Sasan stood alone on a black rock altar. The lamp sat before him, cradled in both hands. He had dismissed all servants. No one else deserved to witness this. "Come forth," he said. Smoke billowed, fire cracked the air, and Rukmar appeared. But not as he had once been. The genie's eyes, once gleaming gold, were now dull and red, like coals burning too long. His body was twisted slightly, leaner, tighter, as though his essence had been bound in tighter chains. Rukmar bowed, stiff and cold. "Master." Hassanet's grin was cruel. "Ah, the sound of obedience. How I missed it. I await your command. You will obey every order." "I must." Hassan walked in a circle around him, trailing his fingers through the smoke. "Then listen closely. You will destroy Aladdin, break him, take from him everything, piece by piece." The genie said nothing. "Why do you hesitate?" Hassan asked. "I remember him," Rukmar said softly. "He freed me without wishing it. He did not rule by fear. Do I need to remind you who holds the lamp now?" The genie flinched, a rare and terrible sight. "No, master." "Good. Then let us begin." A fading star. That night, a storm rolled over the desert, not a natural one. The sky turned violet and black, and distant lightning cracked the earth like a whip. In the palace, candles blew out one by one, the walls groaned. And in his chamber, Aladdin stared into a mirror and barely recognized the man looking back. He was no longer the boy with clever eyes and dirt under his fingernails, no longer the newlywed with dreams bigger than palaces. He was something else now. Something stripped down to its core. Badroulbadah entered quietly and took his hand. "What now?" she asked. He looked at her, jaw tight. "Now, I get the lamp back." "Do you even know where he is?" "No," Aladdin said, "but I know where to start." He opened a small wooden box from beneath the floorboards, something he had forgotten, once gifted by the uncle who betrayed him. Inside was a ring, plain silver, set with a black stone. "I never used this," he whispered. Badroulbadah tilted her head. "What is it?" "I don't know, but he gave it to me before everything began." He slipped it onto his finger, and the stone began to glow. Closing reflection. Hope hadn't yet returned, but something older had. Resolve. Aladdin stepped into the sand beyond the palace, not as a prince, not as a beggar, but as a man who had lost everything and was now ready to fight to get it back. Chapter 13. Alone and powerless. The desert stretched endlessly before him, an ocean of fire and silence. Aladdin walked alone. Behind him, the stolen palace sat like a broken crown atop the sand, no longer glittering, no longer alive. The servants had retreated into fear. The halls had fallen into shadows. His name, once spoken with pride in Agrabah, was now fading from memory. He was no longer a prince, no longer a master, no longer a boy with a genie at his command. Only a man with a ring, a plan, and nothing to lose. The departure. He left at dawn. Badr tried to follow. "You can go alone," she said, her eyes fierce despite the red-rimmed edges. "You still die out there." "I have to go alone," Aladdin said. "Sasan knows the palace. He said'll expect me to stay hidden, surrounded. But if I leave, if I go where even he wouldn't set look, you sir's not a warrior." "I don't need to be," he said, holding up the ring. "I have this, and I still find a way." She reached for him, pulling him close. "If you die," she whispered, "I set'll never forgive you." He kissed her forehead. "Then I live, no matter what it takes." And then he turned, stepping into the dunes. The sand swallowed his footprints in seconds. The first trial. By noon, the sun burned like a blade pressed to his back. His royal robes were gone, traded for rough desert clothes, scavenged from the palace storerooms. His water skin was half full, his stomach was empty, but still, he walked. He knew the land beyond Agrabah, or thought he did, but this was different. The wind blew sideways, shadows moved where they shouldn't, the world felt watched. At sunset, he collapsed beneath the skeletal remains of a tree and pulled the ring from his finger. The black stone still shimmered faintly, like an ember, just waiting for a breath of wind. He stared at it, thinking of the cave, of the lamp, of the man who once claimed to be his uncle. And then for the first time he spoke to the ring. "If there's magic in you," he whispered, "now fits the time to show it." The stone pulsed once, soft and warm. Then a voice answered. The ring's secret. It did not come in fire or smoke. No great being emerged, no roar, no flash of light. Instead, a soft hum filled the air, and then a figure formed before him, smaller than Rukmar, less intimidating, more human, translucent and shifting, like light cast on water. "I am the lesser genie," the voice said, gentle but firm, bound to the ring of shadows. "I serve the bearer in times of need." Aladdin sat up straight. "Can you help me find the lamp?" "I cannot fight the one who holds it," the spirit said, "but I can guide you. I can show you where the sorcerer hides." Aladdin nodded, heart hammering. "Then show me." The spirit raised its hand. Smoke coiled into the air and formed the shape of a map, jagged peaks, a split canyon, and a lone tower carved into black stone. "The sorcerer resides in the obsidian spine, a volcanic chasm to the south. Hidden by spell and storm, only one path leads in, and fewer still return." "Then I shall take it," Aladdin said. The genie tilted its head. "You will not survive it alone. I have no one else." The spirit paused, then said, "You have her." Aladdin looked down. "I wonder bring her into more danger." "She is already in danger," the genie said. "You do not carry this burden alone, Aladdin. You never did." And with that, the spirit vanished. But the map burned itself into Aladdin's memory, as clear as ink, as deep as blood. A fire rekindled. The next day, Aladdin walked again, with purpose, with direction. The despair had dulled. In its place was something sharper, resolve. He didn't feel powerful, but he didn't feel helpless anymore. He had a direction, a plan, and a spark of magic, quiet and loyal. The ring pulsed faintly on his finger as if to say, "Not all light needs to blind." Closing reflection. Far away in the obsidian spine, the sorcerer dreamed of conquest and revenge. And in his tower's highest chamber, Rukmar hovered in silence, bound by chains of magic older than time, his eyes flickering with the last traces of freedom. And somewhere, deep beneath it all, the story had begun again, not with a wish, but with a choice. Chapter 14: A Journey Through Deserts. The desert was no longer the same. This was not the sunlit maze of Agrabah's outskirts, or the golden dunes beyond the market. This was something older, a dead land, a place where time cracked and crawled, and the wind carried whispers instead of sand. Here, Aladdin's footsteps felt watched. His breath seemed loud, the air no longer held warmth, only warning. He had entered the wastes of Jarim, the stretch of forgotten desert that lay between the southern edge of civilization and the volcanic cliffs called the Obsidian Spine. And nothing, not even memory, returned from it unchanged. The map in his mind, the ring's magic, had left an image in his thoughts, a canyon shaped like a serpent's spine, its entrance hidden between twin dunes, a black tower carved from obsidian. The sky there would burn red, and the air would hum with forbidden magic. But that place was still 3 days away. And already, Aladdin Sep's waterskin was running low. Day 1, the false oasis. By mid-morning, mirages danced across the sand, wavering shapes of palm trees and still water. Aladdin knew better than to believe them. But this one looked real. Too real. He approached cautiously, every step heavy with doubt. The trees swayed, water shimmered in the light. There was even fruit in the branches, figs, plump and golden. It wasn't until he stepped into the shadow of the first tree that he realized something was wrong. The shadow didn't move. It was fixed, painted, as if light itself had been fooled. The moment he reached for a fig, the entire oasis vanished, exploding into dust and darkness. In its place stood 3 jackal spirits, their eyes glowing blue, their bodies made of sand and hate. Aladdin backed away, heart pounding. "Let me pass," he said. The spirits laughed, a dry, broken sound. "You carry the scent of the lamp," one hissed. "Our master would see you buried in glass." They lunged. Aladdin rolled, kicking up dust and drawing a dagger, the only weapon he had taken with him from the palace. He slashed, but the blade passed through one spirit harmlessly. The second knocked him flat with a swipe of its paw, made of swirling grit. Then the ring on his hand flashed, bright and sudden. A blast of violet energy erupted from his palm, striking the lead jackal in the chest. It howled and vanished. The others paused. "Jinny-bound," one snarled. "He bears the mark." The spirits hissed and vanished into the wind. Aladdin gasped for breath, staring at his hand. The ring still pulsed, faint and warm. "Thank you," he whispered. It did not answer, but he knew it had saved his life. Day 2, the dead caravan. At dawn the next day, Aladdin found the wreckage of a caravan, bones, broken wheels and tattered flags fluttering weakly in the wind. He scavenged what he could, dried dates, a cracked jar of oil, a knife still clean. Beside a half-buried chest, he found something more. A journal, half-written, in a merchant Sip's hand. "The winds grow louder, the sky is bleeding. We were warned, but we believed in prophet. My brother vanished last night. The dunes have eyes." He closed the book and left it where he found it. That night, he camped beneath a broken wagon, listening to the wind whisper a name over and over. Aladdin, Aladdin, Aladdin. He didn't sleep, but he didn't run. Day 3, the Gate of Ash. By the 3rd day, the dunes had turned black. Ash fell from the sky like slow snow, and the air smelled faintly of sulfur. The sun was a dim smear behind a curtain of smoke, and then at last, he saw it. The Obsidian Spine, a vast split in the earth, deep and jagged, filled with steam and glowing rock. A tower stood at its heart, carved from volcanic stone, its windows dark and narrow like slitted eyes. This was where Hassan lived, where Rukmar was bound, where the lamp waited. He made his way toward the chasm, but the path was narrow, crumbling and protected by ancient wards. Glowing runes hovered in the air, shifting symbols that threatened to crush his mind with madness. The ring on his hand flared again, shielding his vision, guiding his steps. As night fell, Aladdin reached the base of the tower. A great black gate loomed before him. He took a breath and stepped forward. Closing reflection, he had no wishes, no armies, no prophecy behind him. Just a ring, a heart full of fire, and the memory of everything he'd lost. And somewhere inside that tower, The sorcerer waited, holding the lamp like a god. But Aladdin wasn't sit here to beg. He was here to take it back. Chapter 15. The Magic Ring. The black gate stood before him, silent and unmoving, a slab of stone as smooth as glass, carved with runes that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Above, the obsidian spine loomed like the broken tooth of a giant, steaming and sharp against the blood-colored sky. Aladdin adjusted his hood, feeling the weight of the ring on his finger. He had made it. Now came the hard part. At the threshold, he reached out and touched the gate. At once heat surged through his palm, not from the stone but from the magic laced within it. His skin burned, but he didn't pull away. The ring glowed. A circle of runes spun slowly around his arm, then dimmed. The door groaned open with a grinding sound like bone being broken. Beyond it, darkness. He stepped inside. The tower interior. The inside of the tower was nothing like a palace. No silk, no gold, just black stone, shifting shadows and corridors that twisted as if the tower itself were alive. The walls were etched with ancient symbols, some glowing, some weeping light, some bleeding ash. The air was hot and dry, as if the very breath of fire passed through these halls. He moved quietly. Each step felt like a drumbeat in a place where silence was sacred. He passed through chambers where nothing moved, except carvings that changed shape when he looked away. And still, the ring pulsed. It guided him deeper, down narrow staircases, past doors sealed with spells, towards something familiar, the prison of smoke. Finally, he reached a chamber far below the tower, a room carved into the earth's core, circular, glowing dimly with violet flame. In the center floated a sphere of smoke, suspended between 4 obsidian pillars, chains of pure energy wrapped around the smoke like a spider's web. Within the smoke was a shape, large, silent. It was Rukmar, or what was left of him. The genie no longer blazed with fire. His form was dim, flickering, like a dying ember. His arms hung limp. His eyes, once golden, were hollow and black. Aladdin stepped into the chamber. Rukmar. The genie didn't move. The chains tightened, reacting to his voice. Aladdin winced, reaching instinctively for the ring. The genie stirred slightly. "Bia Aladdin." The voice was faint, barely a whisper. "Come here," Aladdin said, stepping closer. "I came back. You shouldn't that have." "I had to." The smoke surged, the chains rattling violently. The runes along the walls flared. "You don't understand," Rukmar whispered. "The lamp. It seps not just a prison, it seps feeding him now. The more he wishes, the more it binds me. He seps draining me, turning me into a weapon." Aladdin stared at his friend, this ancient powerful being reduced to a caged soul. "How do I break it?" Rukmar Sit's eyes flickered. The lamp must be stolen, removed from the sorcerer Sit's grasp. But even that, one Sit be enough. "What else?" "There is a word," Rukmar said. "A name, older than the lamp, older than me. Speak it, while touching the lamp, and the binding will shatter." "What pet's the name?" But before the genie could answer, a door above them screamed open. Boots struck stone. A voice echoed down the chamber stairs. "Well, well," said Hassan. "Look who crawled back from the dirt." Aladdin spun, heart racing. The sorcerer stood at the top of the stairs, flanked by 2 more jackal spirits and holding the lamp in one hand like a king's scepter. "I wondered how long it would take," he said. "Let him go," Aladdin growled. "Oh, I don't think so," Hassan said. "You Sip had your fun. You wore the crown. You kissed the girl. Now it's Sip's my turn again." The lamp in his hand glowed. Rukmar cried out, the chains tightening around him like blades. Aladdin stepped in front of the prison, ring glowing faintly. "You don't scare me anymore." Oz-san smiled, stepping forward. "Then let's see how long you last without your genie." The jackals leapt. Aladdin drew his dagger, the ring burning white. And the chamber plunged into battle. Closing reflection. Above them, lightning curled around the tower's peak. Below them, power stirred, ancient, buried, waiting. And deep in his heart, Aladdin felt something he hadn't in days. Not magic. Purpose. He would not just survive this, he would win. Chapter 16. Rescue and Rebellion. Part I. Smoke and Blades. The jackal spirits lunged. Aladdin dove to the side, rolling behind one of the obsidian pillars, their claws ripped stone like parchment, their eyes glowing with unnatural hunger. "Rukmar," he shouted, "can you help?" The genie strained within the chains, his voice ragged. "I cannot act until the lamp is free. You must get it from him." Across the chamber, Hassan descended the stairs slowly, like a man walking through a familiar memory. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't rush, and he didn't stit. "You cert not a hero," he said coldly. "You cert are a thief. You always were. You stole the lamp. You stole the genie. You even stole the princess." Aladdin rose, dagger in hand. "You gave me the lamp, then tried to bury me alive. And you crawled out. Impressive." He raised the lamp. "But you are not chosen. You are a mistake that refuses to vanish." The lamp flared. The jackals swirled again, closing in. Aladdin slashed with the dagger. It passed through one, but the ring flared white hot, and the other creature screamed as light struck it in the chest. Aladdin turned to the chains holding Rukmar. "There sits a spell, right? A name?" "Yes," the genie whispered, "but you must touch the lamp." Hassan's grip tightened. "I once set to let you." Aladdin threw his dagger. A feint. Hassan swatted it aside. But in that flicker of distraction, Aladdin leapt. His fingers closed around the lamp. And through the contact, a voice, Rukmar's true voice, echoed in his mind. "Say my name. Say the name that binds all genie kind to ash and freedom alike." And the name filled Aladdin's mind, not a word in any human tongue. It tasted like lightning and salt. It burned his throat. He screamed it anyway. Ajurakai. The lamp shrieked. It cracked, not broken, but freed. The runes along its surface shattered like ice. A scream echoed through the tower, louder than any storm. Hassan staggered back, eyes wide. What did you?" Rukmar exploded from the chains in a burst of white flame. The jackals vaporized. And the sorcerer, the man who once held the world in his fist, was thrown against the wall, collapsing in a heap. Smoke cleared. Rukmar floated above the ground, renewed, brighter than he had ever been, flame curling around his shoulders like wings. "You are no longer my master," he said to Hassan, "and your final wish has come due." The sorcerer screamed and vanished in a blast of fire. Part 2. The Fire Within. Far away within the stolen palace, Badrul Bader stood at the gates with a dozen of the remaining guards. Agrabah's finest had stayed loyal, despite being stranded, and now she needed them to act. "The lamp is gone," she said, "but so is the fear." She had spent days watching the cracks form in their prison. Now she spoke to the fear and turned it into fire. "If we are to remain trapped, we might as well take the tower with us." And so they began. She organized rationing, repositioned the outer defenses, and began planting false signals across the sand. Smoke patterns, mirror flashes, illusions, anything to confuse the enemy if he came back. But what she didn't sell was this. He wouldn't set, because Aladdin had already ended it. Part 3. Reunion. Night fell. The obsidian spine was silent. Aladdin limped out of the broken tower, the lamp cold and empty in his hand. The ring cracked, but still glowing, sat on his finger like a scar. Beside him, Rukmar hovered silently. "Is it over?" Aladdin asked. "For now," the genie replied, "but the world will not forget what Youssef done. I don't want them to." Rukmar smiled. "You didn't wish for victory, you earned it. That is the only kind of magic that matters." And then with a flick of his hand, he summoned a portal of fire and light. "Shall we go home?" Aladdin stepped through without hesitation. The desert vanished, and the stolen palace, and the woman he loved came rushing back. Closing reflection. On the balcony of the palace, Badrul Bader turned at the sound of magic crackling behind her. Aladdin stood there, dirty, bloodied, and smiling. She ran to him. No words were needed. And above them, for the first time in days, the stars burned bright and free. Chapter 17. Final Wish. Final Fight. The palace shimmered in the dawn light, no longer stranded, no longer broken. Rukmar's power had returned it to Agrabah's edge, rising like a monument of survival and rebellion. The city awoke to find its lost jewel restored overnight, and the people whispered the name of Aladdin with awe. But peace was not yet secure, and Aladdin knew it. Some enemies die once, others need to be ended. The return of the dead. For all Rukma-Sip's fire and fury, for all the chains that had been shattered, one truth remained. Hassan was not truly dead, destroyed in form, yes, banished to the Netherrealms, perhaps, but bound to dark powers that fed on ambition, the kind of power that does not die with a body. And Aladdin could feel it. A rumble in the sky, a distortion in the wind, a flicker of shadow just behind his reflection. Rukma confirmed it that evening. The sorcerer clings to life, he said, somehow, likely through the mirror realm, an ancient plane that touches our world through cracks of desire and revenge. Can we stop him? Aladdin asked. The genie paused, only with a wish. Aladdin held the restored lamp in his hands. The magic pulsed faintly again, not just as a tool, but as something living, awake, and aware. He had been given one final wish when the lamp was unbound from Hassan, a gift for breaking the curse, for setting Rukma free not just in deed, but in spirit. One wish left. He stood in the palace courtyard, eyes on the horizon. The air warped, the stars flickered, and then, as if conjured by hate itself, the sky split open, and from it stepped a twisted shadow, cloaked in fire. Hassan had returned, no longer in human flesh, but as something darker, hollow-eyed, wrapped in the tattered remnants of his former self, a voice that sounded like wind scraping across bone. I offered you power, he said to Aladdin. You took pity instead. I took freedom, Aladdin said. You wouldn't yet understand it. You think love will protect you now. No, Aladdin said, lifting the lamp. But I don't yet need protection. I need an ending. The last wish. He held the lamp close, heart pounding. Rukma, he said, I make my final wish. The genie appeared, full and bright, no longer bound, but still listening. Aladdin met his eyes. I wish for Hassan-Sip's soul to be cast into the place where no ambition can reach, no magic can grow, and no memory of power can survive. Rukma's face grew solemn. That is a deep wish, and a just one. The genie nodded. So be it. He raised a hand. The sky roared. The very earth beneath Hassan cracked. Not a fiery pit, but a cold blue void, a hole where silence ruled, where ego could not exist, the anti-magic of the ancient realms. The sorcerer screamed, No, I am eternal, I am. And then he was gone, utterly, not slain, erased. And the sky stitched itself shut once more. The aftermath. Rukma hovered quietly, the lamp still glowing faintly in his hand. Aladdin turned to him. It's Sep's over. It is, the genie said, and so is your hold over me. Aladdin offered the lamp back. Rukma did not take it. I am free, he said, but I choose to remain, not as your servant, not as your weapon, as your witness, as your friend. Aladdin smiled. Then we stir both free. The two stood in silence as the wind passed over the palace, clean and quiet, no longer a storm, just peace. For real this time. Closing reflection. That night, Aladdin stood on the palace balcony with Badrulbadour at his side. They said nothing for a long while. Finally, she asked, If you had another wish, what would it be? He smiled softly. This. And she leaned her head against his shoulder. Chapter 18. A Just Ruler. It took time for the dust to settle, but settle it did. The stolen palace, once marooned in the desert, was returned to the edge of Agrabah like it had never vanished. The people, confused at first, wept when they saw their princess again, alive, proud, unbroken. And when they saw Aladdin, they did not cheer like they did for conquerors. They bowed, because they understood now. He had not ruled them by magic. He had not led them by fear. He had saved them because he chose to. The Sultan's sixth decree. The court was summoned on the 7th day after the palace returned. The Sultan, aged and wise, stood before his people, his guards, and the council of nobles. His daughter sat to his right, Aladdin to his left. The Sultan raised a hand. For many years, I have ruled with strength, with order, and with the guidance of stars and scrolls. But time is no respecter of titles, nor is it kind to pride. He turned to Aladdin. This man, born of no name, no palace, no wealth, rose not by force, but by wisdom. by bravery, by heart. He held out the royal seal. Let the throne be his when my days are done. Let him be my heir, and let all who call Agrabah home know that greatness does not come from birth, but from choice. Aladdin bowed, deeply and with tears in his eyes. I accept, he said, not as a prince, but as a servant of the people. And so it was done. The street boy had become a king in waiting, not through wishes, but through will. Badrulbadur's sixth reign. Badrulbadur ruled beside him, not quietly, not passively. She oversaw the rebuilding of the outer districts. She dissolved unjust trade monopolies. She walked the markets with no guards and listened to the people's needs herself. She is the lioness, they whispered. And beside her stood the man who had once stolen fruit just to live another day. They were different, and they were perfect. Rukmar sits farewell. On the night of the coronation feast, Rukmar stood atop the tallest tower, watching the city light lanterns in celebration. Aladdin joined him. You stir leaving, Aunt Setu? He asked. I am, the genie said. Not because I must, but because I can. I have seen what I needed to see. You don't need me anymore. Aladdin nodded slowly. I don't Set, but I Set will miss you anyway. The genie smiled. Call my name again, and I may just return. Not as your servant, but as your friend. With a swirl of flame and stardust, Rukmar vanished into the sky, becoming part of the wind that carried stories from one city to the next. A legend now, like the boy he once served. The final light. Years passed. The palace remained bright. Agrabah grew stronger, fairer, freer. And when children asked their parents who had built the towers that touched the stars, they were told the story, always the same. He was once a boy with nothing, but he found a lamp, and more importantly, he found himself. And when they asked, what happened to the lamp? The answer was always whispered. He let it go. Because the true magic was never in the lamp. It was in the choice not to need it anymore. The end. Thanks for spending this quiet time with me here at Sweet Dreams Storytelling. I hope you're feeling relaxed, peaceful, and ready for a restful sleep. As we say goodnight, let the calm background music guide you gently into dreamland. Before you go, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. And until next time, rest well.